What's going on, guys? Mitch from RespectMerchant.com back with another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast, episode 76, getting towards the end of this 80 episode season for 2021. Today, I have a special guest, Jon Bon, the Director of Partnerships at Dutchie. How are you doing today, John?
What's good, man? I'm doing great, brother. How you doing? How's your holiday lead-up week going?
Oh, man, just winding down like I was telling you right before. I just had my son's birthday. Sadly, he's one of those birthdays right before Christmas. So I'm like, trying to figure out a kid that I'm not trying to get too many toys, splitting up, it's getting crazy, man. We got to clean this house.
I heard that, man. That's cool, though, man. You know, he gets celebrated for like at least a couple weeks in a row every year, man. And honestly, today's day and age, man, celebration's a good thing.
Yeah, you're not, bro. You're not lying. There's a lot of we had a lot of difficult times this last year or something, man. So any reason to celebrate is definitely a positive.
Straight up, man. And I know I said it earlier, man, but I saw y'all mobbing in the matching fits, dude. That went hard, dude. At the birthday party, the kid's gonna look back at that. He's gonna be in high school. He's gonna be like, "Yeah, man, look how fly I was when I was like 3 years old." I love
I
that.
know, but by the time he's
It's
in high
great,
school, I'm
man.
gonna be even older and crustier, though, man. So
Hey,
I'll
man,
have to
you and
hold
me,
back and be like, I was half cool back in the day, man.
man, you and me both, brother. I feel like I'm like a 7-year-old trapped in a 33-year-old body, dude. So, like, I'm trying to get there too, dude.
Oh man, I dig it. So I usually start these off with people's history background with the plant that we're talking about being cannabis. You can, if you want to be vulnerable and disclose your, personal experience with it, or keep it a little more professional, your professional journey. It's on you, whatever you want to share. But I'd love to know kind of your history around cannabis.
Totally, man. I mean, shit. I feel like my professional and personal journey are pretty closely linked. You know what I mean? Like, just like everybody did. I feel like I got into it when I was, much to my parents' dismay, like 14, 15 years old, right? And the relationship I developed with the plant beyond that for me was such a big thing. I mean, like, I have, I ADHD poster child, right? And so, like, there's a lot of things that I felt like helped me kind of center myself a little bit. And cannabis has absolutely been one of those. And then as I've gotten older, as it's become more available, there's a lot of things. Like, I was an athlete for my entire life, bro. So like, I played college baseball, I played football and baseball my entire life, all the way up through that. Is we talk about getting older, dude. I start creaking a little bit, like the knees are popping, the back gets real sore all of a sudden, like still trying to make it to the gym when I can. And as like a pain management, man, has been great. And then obviously the social aspect, I just gonna be straight up, man. I love smoking weed and I love the beauty of the cannabis plant and everything that comes from it, the culture that comes from it, the music, the people, everything, man. And so like that led me to, I got out of college, had like $500 in a job offer, took my first sales job. It's like 2010, right? Spent like 7 years making big business, a lot of money. And that was fine. You know what I mean? Like, it was a great career path that was very well taken care of. I was kind of the golden boy and it was awesome. And then like, I got to be like, mid 20s and I was like, there's gotta be something else that than this in life, right? Just making big companies more money all the time. And obviously cannabis being a passion, it was like 2015, I think at the time. The West Coast cannabis market was ramping. You had Washington, you had Oregon that was recreational, you had California. And if I were to move to those states, I would be kind of behind the gun, or like I call it like chasing the caboose of the train versus, you move to a medical market like Nevada and you have an opportunity to lay the track. So I moved to Vegas in 2015 while I was still working in like HR technology. During that time, I raised some money with a partner of mine to get it grow off the ground. It went really well, man. We had a lot of success in like the early rec days in like 2017 in Las Vegas. And then we got hosed by the people we raised money through. So is what it is. Lesson learned, man. That won't happen twice. But that kind of gave me my first this is I'm all in on cannabis, right? And so like I did some consulting there for like a month or two. I met the co-founders of Dutchie about a couple months after that and joined the company in 2018. And the rest has kind of been history, man. But everything in my life in the last like 5 to 6 years professionally has been geared towards like normalizing the plant and making it more readily available. Like, I can't explain like how excited I am to be like in Kansas City and be able to go to a dispensary that's like 10 minutes away and like be able to pick up product, or like to like have my parents who were traditionally not super cannabis friendly, right? Like asking me to bring, them something home from the dispensary. And it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like that's an entirely different thing. And so, there's so many different things, dude, that have become like an offshoot of this industry. And it's all rad, man. Like, I'm here for all of it. And so really the passion behind the plant drives all of that.
Yeah, hell yeah. And I think, I think that's what some mutual things that connect to, you and I and a lot of other people in this community is that, the love and passion around this plant and then sharing in this joy that, the stigma, we still got a ways to go with it, but it's been broken to an extent where we're, I know yourself, myself are much more comfortable, being our true selves in regards to the plant publicly. And there's a big beauty in that. And then, I also share the same joy in helping break the stigma. And I also share a joy, like I share a sense of gratitude to anyone else that is helping break the stigma. It's like, and not to liken it, but like, I thank military people for their service. But when people like truly help break the stigma, I almost am like, dude, thank you for like, you're helping change my life, like whether you know it or not. Thank you.
Straight up. And what people don't realize too is like stoner culture is okay. You know what I mean? Like breaking the stigma just means like, getting people out of prison and normalizing the plant.
Hmm.
Whereas like, you got people that are craft alcohol connoisseurs, right? I hate like everyone's always comparing alcohol and cannabis, right? And there's like really not a ton of similarities there. There's a few that overlap for sure. But like, if somebody really was into alcohol culture and they were like, a craft, a wine connoisseur, right? Or sommelier, right? You wouldn't call them a stud. That's not looked at negatively. That's like a very
Right.
like that's a prestigious thing to be in the wine community. Whereas like if you're like you got the Ganjier cats that are doing some rad things in terms of like validating people's understanding of the plant, right? That's not a stoner. That's somebody that's like taking cannabis education to an entirely different level. And and it's cool to like enjoy the casual part of cannabis too, right? And so I think that in itself, breaking the stigma is just as much like allowing
Hmm.
people to be who they want to be. You know what I mean? Like that's just in general, dude. And cannabis has got an opportunity to do that, like unlike anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just normalizing it. Cause that's, anyone that's been around cannabis for a long time knows that, every age, race, gender, occupation, none of that matters. A lot of people love weed and a lot of people for a long time had to keep that love just super, super secret and tight lipped. And as we break that stigma and normalize it, it just allows those people to give a little bit less of a fuck.
Straight up, dude. I tell people like if you want to see like how widely accepted the cannabis industry is by like different demographics of people, go sit in a dispensary lobby for an
Mhm.
hour and then watch the different types of people that walk in there. You got old people, young people, like people in suits, people that are wearing Wu-Tang t-shirts. Like me, man, it's like it's the wide variety, right? And it's like, that in itself is like the universal nature of what cannabis is, right?
Mhm.
It's not just like out the trunk in the basement, keeping it in the back corner. Like there's a lot of really cool shit happening. And it's like,
Absolutely.
to be able to elevate that is pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you guys are doing at Dutchie, right? Like as a part of that is bringing, really elevating the tech. There's a couple people, but you guys are definitely one of the leaders in that category of tech of bringing this business comprehension and technical understanding to an emerging market and helping normalize the consumer shopping experience through providing e-com to industry that's very difficult and a lot of red tape and regulation around ecom. But before we get into too much of that, I would love if you could just break it down for our viewers, a little summary of kind of the origin of Dutchie.
Totally, man. I mean, you know, uh, our co-founders both independently successful in the technology space. Our CEO actually started one of the first online food ordering companies when he was like 19. Built that to what it was. Moved to Canada to build the exact same type of business. Following that exit, that became Grub Canada, which was like the largest, first and largest online food ordering company in Canada. And then rode that wave for about 4 years. And he was living in Bend, Oregon at the time when Oregon legalized recreational cannabis in 2015. He went to the dispensary, who actually became our very first Dutchie customer, is a company called High Grade Organics. My really good friend Nick, who actually came to Dutchie from he sold High Grade Organics to be a part of Dutchie as
Oh
in the
wow.
early days. Yeah, he's an unbelievable dude. But he was at the dispensary and there was a line wrapped around the building and he was like, there's an opportunity here. So Dutchie started as primarily an online ordering, actually solely an online ordering company in 2017. And we had a lot of success with that, prioritizing, infrastructure support and taking care of our customers. I think we were talking about it offline, but like doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it in the cannabis industry is like gold. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And it's crazy that like there's so many folks that are just not following up and doing the shit that they said they were going to. So fast forward that, we grow over the next couple of years, raise a couple of rounds of funding. The industry continues to develop. The pandemic happens, which puts like an entirely different importance on like technology in the cannabis space. And that decision led to us acquiring two, I'm sorry, that I guess event, I should say, led to us acquiring 2 point of sale companies in Leaf Logics and Greenbits, which we've now folded into the Dutchie, family of companies. And so now we offer e-commerce, POS, and we're soon to roll out an ACH payment solution. So super stoked on that as well. So really now it's like our entire business, as we fortunately have been a part of helping elevate this, right, is really just making cannabis retail and cannabis business simpler, right? I mean, trying to simplify those conversations between the brand and retailer, between the retailer and their consumer, because as everyone knows, right, if you spent any amount of time in cannabis, there's about a million other problems to exist during the day than is my technology working the way it's supposed to. And so, here we are today, almost, we're probably going to cross the 600 employee mark before the end of the year. Over the next couple of days, I saw a list of new hires. So it's like the coolest thing in the world, man, that we got like some of the craziest rock stars I've ever been around that are now applying those talents in the cannabis space, as well as a ton of folks that have spent time in the cannabis space that understand those pain points and can help connect those dots, man. So it's all just like one big, like, let's make it there together, because we all know like the types of big business that's coming to the space eventually. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And with your guys' valuation this year, right? Like, I mean, you guys have received a couple valuation, year after year, it's grown. So it's not like this is the first time, but with that valuation and the news surrounding that, do you feel like that's even helped break the stigma for other tech workers to take an eyeball and maybe shift it over towards cannabis?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely kind of redefined what's possible in terms of like raising capital. Now, at the end of the day, like um, valuations and everything, you have to live up to those,
Hmm.
right? But ultimately, like, we get really excited about like the opportunity to even have a shot to be in that conversation, right? And it's like, I joke about it, but like this time last year, would have never thought we'd be having this conversation in this moment here. The same thing with the year before that, right? Now I can imagine only if things are consistent that we'll be in the same position, a year from now. And that's not even necessarily just Dutchie. That's just like the cannabis industry in
Hmm.
general, right? And so like that particular like floating opportunity of like what's possible continues to like move and shake, and there's opportunities all within that. And so like, as folks that have kind of been some of the initial crew that's risen to the top of that, right? It's our job to shake those trees and get those new opportunities available for those unbelievably innovative companies and brands and producers and cultivators to get out there and make it happen. And that's like where we see all the value, right? Is just like the elevation of that. And so, yes, absolutely. I mean, don't be wrong. No new, I shouldn't say no new friends. We got plenty of new friends, but we also know there's a lot of people that want to be your friend now all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Like, which is totally okay, man. We're with it. Like, we remember what it was like making those phone calls, trying to get on people's radar, trying to get the right partnerships together to be able to do it. And like, we got all the respect and love in the world, and want to be able to help that however we can, man.
Yeah, no, that there's definitely a testament to that, or a thing that when with success comes opportunity, but it also comes people see you as opportunity, right? And there's can be a negative aspect to that, in a lot of different regards. You mentioned COVID being a big proponent. I know that helped kind of shift cannabis, the e-commerce, just the digital space in general. But I remember talking to you too personally, like early on in COVID, and I can't remember. You're like, bro, it's so crazy. We've grown, like we're adding so many accounts. What was that growth rate like in that first, like, what, like 60, 90 days of kind of COVID? Once COVID kind of set in, where it's like, oh, this is real. Lockdowns are happening.
Man, it was like a 0 to 100, like nobody would ever believe. And like, don't get me wrong, like that year, and really still even after that, it's still been going up. But like those first couple weeks of March, man, it was like, world starting to shut down. And really up until that point, like cannabis companies were like, yeah, technology, great. We grow great weed, we have great customer service, and that's absolutely valid. And it wasn't quite a need. It was more of like, either we really think this is important, or we don't think it's important at all. And there was really no gray area. And so like, fortunately for Dutchie, for the cannabis industry in general, because I would argue that like you find any retailer that says they're not in a better place than they were
Mm,
before when they solidify their technology stack, I don't think that's going to happen. And they truly took the time to do it. Right. So like that gave us the opportunity to like allow that business case to be made for us. And then fortunately, we just put the rails in place to like support that growth. So like those first 4 months, bro, were like blinding speed, 16 hours a day, every half an hour, on the half an hour. We had people doing demos that were even on the sales team, right? Because it was like, okay, I need online ordering now if I want to stay open. And like, how quickly can you get us launched?
Mm-hmm.
And like, that was great. We still had to be able to sustain that growth. We still had to support the customers that we had. Fortunately, we built out our support team in a way that was unbelievable. And that's a huge testament to the folks that have done that, as well as our Eng team, product, CS, everything. So we were ready to answer the call, right? Where a lot of companies, kind of prioritize, let's go spend a ton of money on marketing. Let's go spend a ton of money on this. And like, nobody really even knew who we were until like a year and a half ago, I would say. It was the first time that I've actually I've spent a lot of time in a lot of states, cannabis friendly, walked into a place, they'd be like, "Oh, Dutchie." And I was like, "Damn, that's rad." You know what I mean? And that's still kind of a newer thing to us. Right. And so like, it just accelerated things at like another clip, and we were ready to answer the call there. Whereas like, if you, it was a tough time.
And that's unique to hear, right? But I guess sometimes I live in my own silo, like where I saw you guys, and just the opportunity to the clean layout. Some of our, not some, a lot of our clients use you guys as, menu platform for their online ordering. And so from that standpoint, it was always like something I was a fan of. And you just looking at people, there was, there's you guys and there's a couple other people out there I thought that had good products positioned well. But, for me, I'm just thinking the future, always thinking the future, and online and digital, that's definitely my realm. So it's interesting to hear like how you're like, oh, we weren't really well known, and then this happened, and it like put us in the forefront. Where I'm just like, man, I don't get how people were just blind. To not know you guys a little bit more intimately just means that people were walking around like this. But like you said, there was a time period where it didn't matter, right? Like cannabis was selling, right. And we've all seen it as a market starts out. The strategy of the weed sells itself, like that's true for a brief moment while there's limited supply, limited distribution outlets. That's very much true. The excitement of legal cannabis, limited supply, the weed will sell itself. But as a market matures, we see it, competition heightens greatly. People start grabbing positions and getting aggressive. So that's another thing. A question I have for you is like how even outside of COVID, but as this market's matured, what are some of the things that you've seen kind of changed in the e-commerce landscape of cannabis?
Man, I think outside of the very glaring one of like, we think online ordering is important now, whereas maybe we didn't before. I think that the marketing around cannabis is getting more creative because there are so many limitations around cannabis marketing, especially in like, I mean, that better than anybody, right? And it's like, there's so many different, like people get Instagram shut down, everything like that. So like, I think that like, being able to like tangibly track marketing efforts is something that we've been really excited about because, you tracking someone walking in a store and figuring out where they came from like a lead gen standpoint is a very tough thing to do.
Right.
However, if they come to you digitally, you can very definitively see where that money spent from a marketing lens. Was it a text message campaign? Was it like an email blast? Was it like a QR code they scanned in a magazine ad that they jumped on and whatever? Like those are all trackable data points that are actually like arming retailers to like make more informed decisions about their business. And that in itself is like the crux of everything that makes any business successful is like, here's where we were at today. Here's how we get to here tomorrow. And like to give data-driven decisions behind that is like a massive thing. And more importantly, to make them digestible. So like, that's the other thing too, is like, you think about, me personally, I always joke, I'm like the most non-technical person that works for a technology company in the world because we have so many unbelievable, like brilliant technical minds on our team. Right. But on a general level, right. The general population doesn't understand technology like that. Right. And then especially in the cannabis space where you might have legacy operators that are just now like literally doing this above board for the first time. Right. How can we help those businesses be successful? Right. Because I mean, dude, we're at Emerald Cup 2 weeks ago. So the best weed in the country is coming out of Humboldt. You know what I mean? And it's like, how can we elevate those legacy operators and the small farmers there that have literally some of the best product and are just unbelievable people and help elevate them to where they can compete with, the companies that are very well funded, that have massive market share. And then furthermore, like these massive companies that are coming to the space inevitably, you know what I mean? And that's the most rewarding thing in the world, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's like, we're helping like the people that are the best at their craft be more successful. You know what I mean? And that's everything.
Hell yeah. I think, and that's a thing. I think a lot of legacy people or people who've been around, take joy and a pride in is making sure that that legacy, that culture is still established as we move towards, some people call it the conglomeration, corporatization, whatever. It's the inevitable maturation of any industry or business as we head down that journey of maturity. It's definitely important that we make sure, those of us that know and are able to indicate how important it is to help pull, bring, push, or place some of those legacy and OG people alongside us, man.
Straight up, man. Because I'll tell you, like, and not saying it another way, like, money and success ruins everything almost always, right? It brings a different crew, different attention, which is all right, man. Like, that's the inevitable, like, spoils of the success, right? These people wouldn't even be interested in the cannabis industry if it weren't for the
Hmm.
groups that have been putting the time in, the blood, sweat, and tears, man. It is absolutely no cakewalk to operate a cannabis retailer or cannabis business for that matter, right? So it's like, in a way, it's almost gratifying, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And for those to know that you have that staple on it at the same time, you know what I mean? But also, like, there's that other part to consider too.
And so, this might not directly be your wheelhouse, but I'm curious of some of the greatest obstacles of running an e-commerce business that touches so many states, different regulations per state, so many brands. Off the top of my head is like I have no idea how you guys keep up to date with all the product SKUs because a new strain is and product is designed, probably every couple hours. But what are some of those challenges of having something that's so much scale? There's a lot of variables a part of it.
Totally. So I mean, there's a lot of them. You mentioned one of them, and I'll even go a little deeper than the brand and content information because that is a very big one. But I think if you go further down there, it's the ability to be consistent across state lines with products, brands, customer data that you're trying to like make educated decisions from a marketing lens of like customer profiles. For example, you're a large MSO, it's got dispensaries in 5 states, right? Connecting that customer profile across those states, if there's somebody that travels and goes to the dispensaries, is something that's traditionally been a challenge. It's not, we found ways to solve that, right? And that's a big piece of it. But I would say, the idea that every single individual market is regulated and taxed differently, yet every single person expects like an extremely similar, at least,
Hmm.
experience on the front end, which are all things that we account for. I think another part of that is like having to rely on things that are completely out of our control. I mean, maybe they're not, like regulation and legislation and stuff like that. Those are all like floating things that you can't impact, But at the same time, like that's putting obstacles in place that ultimately we couldn't move if we wanted to, and we said we need to change that today. It doesn't change, right? I think the biggest one that almost everyone runs into, unfortunately, we prioritize higher than everything is that scale,
Hmm.
right? Like everything is easy with 10 dispensaries, right? How does that look with 100 dispensaries? How does that look with 1,000 dispensaries? How does that look with 5,000 dispensaries? And so, like, having to like we are our boss is our customers, right? Like we answer to our customers exclusively, and ultimately they answer the consumer, right? So we're in this position of we're like, you talk about like, being a dad, like, is this the toy you want? No. Okay. Is this toy you want? No. Okay. Is this, and so like, when you think about like the decisions you have to make, and retailers being as demanding as they are, because they should be, right? Like, this is your business, you should run this the way you want to. um Saying no to certain things that would have made it more difficult to scale later is one of the best things that we ever did, because we saw a lot of people that took that low hanging fruit and said, yeah, we'll crank out this crazy hacky feature on our technology platform. Yeah, we will do what you need and build an integration with this company that's going to take us 3 weeks of engineering resources off of this project that's actually impacting our entire customer base. And like, losing that deal was tough, but those people are all our customers now, because ultimately, when you think about tangled wires behind the TV, it's like you clip a wire and like the light turns off in the living room, like you don't know what's going on, right? And like if you're layering something on top of each other with no discernible way back or like way to fix things because everything changes, then you're in a really tough spot. And like so many people miss that mark, right? Whereas like building anything for scale is like, what does this look like at 10 times the volume of what it is today? Is this still like an applicable solution? And how do you work backwards from that? And I would say like that was something that was, I wouldn't call it abstract, but it was a newer thing to me in terms of like being a part of like startups my, last 5, 6, 7 years. you do what you got to do to
Yeah.
to pay the bills and pay the team, right? And fortunately, we prioritize raising capital so we can keep the best people on the team, but also make the best decisions for the business. And it's panned out very well. So
Yeah.
totally.
That's another thing that I recall that from one of our conversations probably years prior, where I was just, it was just, we were talking to, I think about interviewing you for an article or something. And then one of the questions, I don't even think it was in relation to the article, I was just like, what's next? What are you guys working on? And I remember very distinctively, I don't remember how you said it, but you were like, man, we're just really focused on being the best at where we're at. And like, as we grow, we'll add in, we'll partner with other people, but we're not trying,
Totally.
you said, our goal is not to be wide. We're trying to be very focused and really well. And as we build a foundation, we can add from it. And it's, testament to what you're saying now here 2 years later, you guys' success, and that being a big proponent of it. So it's great to see that working out, because it is very, very strange. Like you said, in startup land where you're lean, limited funding, limited budget, it's hard not to chase, hey, we could get a margin over here. Hey, we could get another value add here. But it comes down to, like everything in life, balance. Like, how we only have so many resources. Do we spread it too thin and just, take as many swings at the plate as we can, or do we just sit here and wait for our pitch?
Dude, being fanatical about those resources has been like the most important thing. And I can thank our co-founders and the rest of our team, our CTO, I mean, really everybody that was there in the early days that instilled that in the team, that's really helping instill that in the next generation of the team, right? Because like, especially as you grow, you bring on new folks into the org, you acquire companies, you're blending a lot of different cultures together. You know what I mean? Like, we always have been of the stance that like we want everyone to be their genuine, authentic self at work, and bring those things that made you successful other places here. But we use the phrase like strong opinions loosely held internally, right? And if we disagree and move forward, we're moving forward as a team, right? Even if you weren't on board with that decision in the beginning, like disagree and commit, right? And so like those decisions and thinking about like taking everyone's considerations into account, like interdepartmentally, right? Not just sales, not just product, not just eng. That's how you make those scaling decisions in an accurate way. Because, dude, when you're making them as fast as we've had to make them the last couple of years, like, lucky or good, I don't know, but like the game plan is what puts it forward. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And so, as you guys have grown through some of these acquisitions and offering some of these other products, you guys have done so with partnerships with various organizations, other
Totally.
technology companies. What do you guys look for in some of these partnerships of what makes a right fit to be a value add to the Dutchie ecosystem?
So to like go in reverse order, what I was just talking about, scalability is everything, right? Like we know that like if there's like any guarantees in life, like death, taxes, people are buying more legal weed tomorrow than they bought today forever, right? So like what does this look like, a year from now when, we help each other grow and you bring on 1,000 more dispensaries as that partner, right? What does the team look like? I think so much of it is like what's important in the now in terms of like roadmap and what's important to our customers. Like I can't tell you like how many awesome companies that I get to meet with on a weekly basis that I'm like, damn, I can't wait till we get to work with you. Right. But in the moment, 600 employees, every single resource is still spoken for. And like there's like 40 more people fighting for airtime on that same roadmap with all these different initiatives. And it's like so much of that is driven by like what impacts our customer base, right? How does this impact the most general? And like we like the onesie twosie stuff. Like there's ways to like we've been very good about like if there's a problem and you're wanting to go outside the box on the solution, let's start with the like solution and work backwards from that within like the current framework. Because ultimately, if we said yes to every customer request that we got, right, as much as we would love to and be a dev shop that just cranked out those types of things, we would never get anything done, right? Because like the industry is so fast moving and it's growing at such a clip that like those requests are coming up every day, right? So like, scalability of the partner is number one. Like what's their current footprint and how would it impact their current customer base? And then like, what's the growth opportunity there, right? There's a lot of like, without being specific, like you're either in this game for the long haul or you're in it for like the quick buck and the quick payout, right? And it gets really definitive and you can tell who's in it for what, right? Us, we're here for the long haul, man. I hope to be doing this for the rest of my life until, they kick me out, right? But like at the end of the day, like, I mean, like there's so many things, man. And all of that like funnels back to that same central point of like, those North Star metrics that make us successful, we have to drill everything back, because ultimately we've got over 5,000 retailers depending on us to show up tomorrow. You know what I mean? And we can't let those folks down. And we have to continue to innovate, and we have to continue to be more stable than we were yesterday. And we have to do all of these things that, you can't do if you're making ad hoc decisions without a ton of data and I guess like intelligence behind it.
And what's some of the ways that you guys collect this intelligence feedback from consumers and kind of prioritize what's the next thing to, improve upon, or the next thing to add to the system?
I mean, it's going to sound crazy, talking and listening to our customers. It's a wild thing, man. Like literally, like people ask us like why we moved into the POS. Is like, if you're e-commerce, it's like, you think MarTech, ad tech's the obvious next step, but in listening to our customers, a lot of the problems are downstream. And so when you think about like, if you're a retail business and 80% of your problems come from integrations or that central tech stack, everything else that happens after that doesn't matter, because you can't rely on the consistency of it. And so like being able to like understand that, and like, the feedback and the quantity of that feedback that we got from our customers, it was the only logical decision. And like, obviously, yeah, we're excited to do all the coolest marketing shit in the entire world, dude. You don't raise all this money and sink $100 million into R&D to not do that, right? And like to even say that out loud just blows my mind. It's like I'm sitting here in my childhood bedroom in Kansas City, and I'm just like spending $100 million on R&D. But like, that's the truth though, man. Like, and all that stuff comes afterwards. But like the bigger problem was what we solved, right? And what we're continuing to work on solving. And honestly, our livelihood and our ability to impact that is all driven by that. What's the big problem to solve? What's the biggest pain in your ass as a retailer or a brand that you're dealing with today? And how can we help you work backwards from that and solve it? That's always going to be the answer, So like, while I like to say like we dictate our roadmap, it's really the need of our customer base, man, and those decisions we make.
And that's poetry too. Like honestly, I did, it makes so much sense. I've never even put much thought into your guys' interest in the POS space, but that working with clients in this space, the integration is the hugest pain point. And whether you're in real estate working with Zillow, or cannabis working with whatever platforms you're working with, right? You have to wear that person at that client, that company has to wear 100 different hats, right? And so like you said it earlier, like everything should be to make it easier and simplified for them. Like that's your guys' role as a product, as a company. And there's so much stuff to do, and it's really poetry that you guys looked at that instead of like what's next. It's like, let's take a step back, address this the biggest pain point issue that then unlocks making everything, from there. Now we're just, to our conversation years ago, building from the foundation.
Yeah, it's exactly right, man. It's like, don't get me wrong, like we have some unbelievable innovators from companies that have grown really fast, cannabis companies, non-cannabis companies, right? The DoorDash, PayPal, Twitch, all these companies that have grown insanely quick over like a short period of time. And there's like what we think is going to be next and what our customers would like to be next. And then we got to find a way to make those two meet in the middle so we can solve that, right? Because like ultimately, like we know a lot of really cool things that we could be doing that we can't wait to. It's just a matter of priority. And it's like, okay, because if we don't fix everything along the way there and like make sure that the boat is airtight and like completely waterproof on the way there, then all of those cool things are not as effective as they would have been. And you end up having to go back and fix them anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, back, to taking it to the retail front, obviously you look at a lot of data. I know data is not your necessarily your lane, but I also know you're very well versed in this industry, personally, and obviously working at Dutchie, you're a trove of information. What do you think are some of the main drivers behind individual products or brands selling? Do you think that it's simply price? Is it quality, word of mouth, bud tender? You think it's online recommendations, brand power? What are some of the components you think that have impact on these consumer purchases?
Man, it's a lot of things. I think in the in-store level, the bud tender has such a big impact on that. And I think like, because ultimately, depending on where you're at, if you're an adult use market, I would say close to half of the customers, and I'm not going to give you the exact percentage, but close to half of the customers that come in every day are first-time shoppers in the cannabis, like, or maybe the first time they've been to that dispensary, right? And depending on like the volumes and like, they're understanding cannabis for the first time, and like, what do you recommend is a huge thing. Now, when you think about on the digital front, content and descriptions, and like, which is something that we've recently been working tirelessly, because there's definitely some companies out there that feel like they have solved it, but there's still a ton of holes in it. And we're like, we don't roll anything out half-ass here. So like, whereas there might have been groups that like had like content solutions out like a couple years ago, we're pretty definitive in how we go to market with that. Like if you're like a connoisseur that we were talking about earlier, and you got like that nug run, beautiful sauce that's got this sheen to it, and you're like, damn, that looks unbelievable. If that's like not represented online the way that it should, it doesn't have like the terpene profiles in there or whatever else, like that doesn't do, you're not buying that online for $80 a gram. You're like, because I don't know, right? I haven't looked at it. I haven't smelled it. I don't have an idea. So like, that's a tremendous challenge there for sure. But like that being said, like, I personally had the experience of in Nevada, getting a cannabis company off the ground prior to my Dutchie days. Like I was saying, we built that entire brand on t-shirts and hats, right? I still have people that will call out, KIF Premium Cannabis, which is the company that we'd started. And they're like, I saw like, I got a picture someone sent me, because I don't live in Vegas anymore, obviously, of a KIF shirt still rolling around at a dispensary. And this was like 2.5, 3 years ago. Everyone knows that like the cannabis industry runs on swag. And so like, quality time and making sure that people understand your products, and let's be serious, samples, right? At the end of the day, like how is a bud tender supposed to recommend your product if they haven't tried it and they can't give that direct feedback? And everybody knows that's the way the game works. So it's like from like the digital question and like the in-person question are a little bit different, but the end like point is all the same, in that like you have to really work to build relationships with the consumer, because like in cannabis, there's an opportunity to generate a loyalty to a brand unlike any other space, right? Like if you get down with 710 Labs in California, you're not dabbing anything else, right? Because they make the best concentrates from some of the best flower, right? But, you go to like Missouri, right? And because 710 is not there yet, that's not a thing. You know what I mean? And so like being able to like, really capture those consumers as this market continues to like stair step up is super, super important. And like, there's new avenues to do that every single, like, it seems like every single week, right? Lead gen, ad tech, getting in people's face. Cannabis is like C-ball, hit ball, right? Like you have to like know, okay, I'm being marketed this. Damn, that sounds awesome. I'm going to go pick that up. Right. And like, as that continues to open up, it becomes way more important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, even echoing, from the brand and the loyalty, even taking that to the black market, because I think the black market has been a good indicator for certain things, right? Like the black market has showed an indication that there's a demand for California cannabis. Even states where there's legal cannabis, there's still a demand for black market cannabis from California.
Totally.
The black market data has shown us that. But I even think back to maybe some of my personal data collection days, that when you had a guy back in the day, or girl, and that was your person that proved consistency on just the whole experience, right? From quality to whatever. Once you had built a good, consistent experience, you could have a fuck up here or there, but they've trusted. Overall, you've been good to me. The first time, you can't fuck up you fuck up the first time, you're fucked for life. You can't fuck up the first time. But then also, people will have that loyalty of being like, hey, you got any? I'm out of town, or I'm out. Let me know when you're back. Maybe I'll go buy a little bit to hold me over, but I'm not going to spend my amount because you're my guy. And we see that now, like you mentioned, certain brand people will, I only smoke 710 Kir, whatever, insert brand here. People will say, I only smoke this. Oh, you don't have it? I'll buy just a gram or a pre-roll to get me over until those eighths or quarters are back in stock.
Right. And that loyalty, I feel like, is not super consistent across like everyone wants to tie CPG to cannabis. And like, I think there's definitely some correlation there, but like not quite as much as people like pointed out to be today. Right. Because like some of the limitations that exist in cannabis don't exist in traditional CPG. Right. And like in shipping, for example. Right. So it's like that loyalty, me sitting here in Kansas City, like if I lived here and I could get like 710 Labs sent to me, you're damn right I'd be getting that sent to me, and I'd wait an extra week and be more conservative with my dabs to have the product that I want, right? So like it's a matter of like staying consistent in the offering, and then realizing that like so many companies are like prioritizing packaging and like the marketing campaigns and not putting enough time into quality products, when there is like I mean, when you smoke as much weed as we have, right? You know, there's a difference between good weed and bad weed, bro. I can't even describe to you how bad the weed was in Kansas growing up. You know what I mean? But like, you definitely know that difference. And I saw someone mention something about terps. Megan, appreciate the love. The terps versus THC argument, man. It's like the fact that we're still having to like convince people of
Mm,
that is crazy. But that's like the 800-pound, mammoth in the room,
right.
right? It's like, are you going to sit there and like change people's mind on that? And they're going to come in and pick out the cheapest thing with the highest THC, right? That's not necessarily a consumer problem. That's a problem of us getting them the information. And so
Hmm.
finding easier ways to do that and like educating is the most important. Starts with the bud tender, moves to the online shelf, and all of that stuff is tied in together like super, super intricately.
Yeah, I'm a big like nerd on positioning, and I've said this for years. Obviously, I'm not doing it, and I'm not putting my money up. But I've always been curious. I've always wanted a store or a brand to really just own like THC percentage, like even on their packaging, THC percentage doesn't matter. I don't know, somewhere on there, and just owning that because I think as a consumer, I know cultivators personally that'll be working on a cut, and I'll get it, and I'll be like, oh man, this is awesome. When's it dropping? And they're like, bro, I can't get it over like 19%. I'm not going to put it out, And I'm like, dude. And they're like, buyers won't buy it. And even if they did, consumers wouldn't buy it. And so I think that there's potentially, again, I don't know, but I think that there's a market out there for someone to completely own that and just blatantly be like, fuck THC percentages, like to their
Right.
core.
I wish, man. I think, dude, as much as I'm on that program, and I listen, man, if you find an avenue to make that happen, I'm with it, dude. It's regulation will never let that happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they'll never let us like not put the THC label on a COA or like on packaging. And like maybe, dude, there's all kind of people sort through those all the time. Maybe like a little like THC in a very small back corner that's super small that it's absolutely on there, and so you can't like and then but you would have to have some serious loud. But I can tell you, like for me, like I never look at THC as an
Right.
indicator. I'm right to the terps. And fortunately, it's cool because we've started to see the transition of like obviously testing for terpenes is more expensive in the lab. And we've seen brands start to like move toward that and start doing that, which is great because they know that it's important for those that it's important to. And those for it's not like they're usually pretty open to learning and understanding why it's important. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a shifting of talking about like breaking the stigma and like changing people's minds on stuff, man. Like, all the information is there. It's just a matter of how do we get that to folks
Right.
in a meaningful way that like helps educate, right?
Absolutely. And that's, there's a lot of difficulties, like you mentioned earlier, just, you touched on the marketing, there's a lot of limitations around working with a federally illegal substance. A lot of these platforms are, counterintuitive in working with the cannabis industry. So it limits the marketing. And so I know there's some challenges, but I think ultimately you hit it the nail on the head. That a lot, people haven't found a way to communicate this right. A lot of people have good examples and have put in effort. Information's there, the education's there. There's plenty of examples there, but it's just not landing with consumers yet. I don't know. Maybe it's just a focus of time. Maybe it's going to take a little bit more time or some super, super mainstream media that comes out with a special report, or the THC percentage conversation happens in a fucking primetime television series. I don't know what it's going to take, man.
Maybe, man. And here's the cool thing, right? Like, being where we are at today in this moment in time in the industry, right? Like, there's more of an opportunity for us to kind of educate that more than ever, and like really more or less like the product companies as well, not as much as the consumer, because like our job and meaning like Dutchie in this role is like making sure that if people are taking the time to do that, that we can make that as seamless as
Mm-hmm.
possible to communicate, right? Because like there are like no shortage of time suck moments in a dispensary retail operation every single day. And so like you're keying stuff in, you're doing all this, right? The more we can automate stuff like that, it leaves more time for the education of things, which is really the fun part. That's almost why everybody is here in the first place, right? Is to like, hey, I believe so much in this that I want to spread that love to everybody in the world and have them understand why it's great, or at
Mm-hmm.
least have an open mind to it. Look, like I'll be the first one to tell you, like, if cannabis isn't for you, right? I'm not going to sit there and be like, you should smoke if you're not into it. Like, that's not me. You know what I mean? Not to, whatever. I'll leave that on the back burner. But like, that's something that like the unifying factor, almost like professional sports, right? Or like
Mhm.
music, right? Everyone here loves music. Everyone here loves sports. Everyone here loves cannabis more than anything. And like that common denominator is like like the universal thing across all people that work in the industry, right? And like when you think about that, of course you want to share that love. That's why
Right.
you go work in a retail. That's why you go work for a brand, because you want to bring this to the world, right?
Mhm.
But you've also got all the other shit that you have to handle in the day to make that happen. And sometimes those things fall by the wayside if you can't make it easy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, and that's a unique thing even about the community of cannabis at large, like taking a step further that, right? Like cannabis is a sharing, share a joint, get in a circle, pass it around, I mean, I consume by myself because I find myself by myself a lot, but coming up and cutting my teeth and learning about cannabis and my experiences, it was a communal thing,
Totally.
it's very much just at the backbone of the culture of this industry.
Yeah, dude. It's everything. And like I'm super stoked that like that's like only gonna continue in a better way. I say this to a lot of people, but as a as someone that's been to a lot of shows, so we saw each other at Hall of Flowers, right?
Mhm,
Dope ass show. Shout out to Cure and Originals for throwing the dopest party that anyone's ever seen. Um, like there's like since the beginning of time in the weed game, it's been like my weed's better than their weed. Their weed
mhm,
sucks. My weed's great. That's been like that's the crux of weed communication, right? And we got everyone was just been in lockdown for the last 2 years. This pandemic has been like so difficult on so many people, right? And like everyone's I think had like a different sense of like empathy that's been instilled for like the rest of the world over these last like 2 years. And you get out to like Hall of Flowers, which is in my mind one of the best B2B shows you'll
mhm,
ever see,
absolutely.
right? I mean, it's unbelievable. They do an unbelievable job. Like there was way more community out there, not as much like shit talking on other people's products. It was like we're all out here, man. We're just here. This is California cannabis. This isn't like my weed's better than their weed. Their weed sucks. But I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of that, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of part of the game. But like I saw way more community around that, and that shit is like refreshing. I was like, hell yeah! It's about time that people kind of jump in and realize that like everyone sees these big companies that are releasing press releases saying that we're coming to the cannabis space.
Mhm,
Like it is literally all of us in a foxhole together. Even Dutchie, who is like, a large company, right? We still run like a small company. We still consider ourselves a small company. And we're always on the side of small companies, right? So like that in itself is a cool thing to see like that evolve as like a byproduct of people kind of figuring out what's important. You know what I mean?
absolutely, and that's a great point. The competitive, the shit talking is something that exists, and it's existed more prevalent. Yeah, I don't know if it's attributed more to the world opening back up, and there's just more general excitement. But I think it's also a part of the industry because it's those like we were saying. Your average consumer is going to have their brand they stick to. They might try other products, they stick to that. But those of us that are more mature, while we might have our brand or brands, some of us like yourself and myself that travel might have different brands per different area code we're in,
Straight up.
but we're still, myself, I go to a dispensary. I can usually identify a product or a brand I've had in the past where I'm like, yeah, I want that. But I want to try something new. Let me buy what I know and take a chance on something else. And as I think more cannabis operators are starting to understand, like, hey, I can be a fire $55 eighth and I can be friends with the next brand that offers a $55 eighth next to me because consumers are probably, some consumers that buy that level of quality are going to buy both. And it's not like they're going to choose, I like this one over this one. Man, I like the gelato from them. Their gelato's good. It's not as good as theirs, but their, Kush Mints is the one, right? Like you have your different
Straight up.
selections from everyone. And the more people kind of bask and understand that, especially the Hall of Flowers, where everyone's pulling out their new fucking genetics. I'm I'm not sure. I don't find one genetic I like, and I'm like, that's all I'm smoking. I'm trying to find it all, man.
Dude, that's what I'm saying, man. And it's like, most people don't realize that like a cut of gelato, right, is grown differently between
Right.
cultivars, right? It's like it's not all going to be the same from the same folks. And so like as people like that's my favorite thing, dude, is like the connoisseur sport of it, right? It's like I truly appreciate getting to enjoy unbelievable cannabis products from like all the best cannabis companies in the world. Like we don't have to be bougie about it, dude. We're Switzerland. Like we work with
Right.
like the best cannabis companies in the world. So like I can take an unbiased lens to all of it. And like so many things are great in so many ways. And like the idea is like making sure that you put the time to keep those quality products cranking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so, on the topic of brands, what are some ways that you envision like brands to be able to leverage the internet to increase sales through e-com? Like, what are some ways that they can own that channel to get more brand awareness or push more sell through?
You know, honestly, a lot of it is like effective, like follow-up marketing campaigns, right? Being able to like utilize text messaging campaigns in the way that you can. I also think loyalty is a huge piece to that as well. If you're a brand though, right? Making sure that you know, whatever presence you have and whatever retail exists beyond just what's on the shelf, right? Whether that's like getting, you know, bud tenders, you know, shirts, hats. And again, like I'm not the expert. I'm by no means a digital marketing expert in the slightest. In fact, I would say I know little to next to nothing on the digital marketing front. But in terms of like, you know, as a cannabis consumer, what keeps me coming back, quality products, opportunities to like engage with the brand and do cool things, understand what's coming next, and like swag, dude. It's such a simple thing. People overcomplicate it. They're trying to do like these crazy algorithmic marketing things that don't even work all the time because there's so many limitations on cannabis marketing when really you just got to show up and be present. Have a brand ambassador that's a super stoked person that's like there to be able to communicate the value of the product, doing pop-ups in dispensaries. Right now, again, that's different with like the pandemic and stuff, but like that's everything, man. That's what the cannabis community and culture is about. That's what drives the loyalty in my mind as a consumer, right? Now, there's obviously various technical things you can do to drive loyalty and be able to make intelligent decisions around that. But all of those come from improving upon the ground and pound or like grassroots marketing efforts that exist today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you know, on the subject of cannabis being legalized, what are some of the areas you're seeing kind of the most growth and most excitement in across the U.S. today?
You know, honestly, dude, everyone's really hyped on payments. And give me 2 seconds here. I'm just gonna flip this light on because it's getting dark here in the Midwest here. Oh, there we go. Wow, that's intense, man. It's like you turn the light on there. But in terms of you know, things that are happening today, payments, everyone's really excited about. You know, safe banking will eventually pass, right? I think that as marketing restrictions start to like lighten up a little bit, right? There's going to be more of an opportunity to like truly market your business in the digital sense. You know, direct to consumer is always one that we hear all the time. And like, as much as like, there's definitely brands that are starting to do it. And I think there's definitely gonna be an opportunity to continue to do that as it grows. And that's like the next big thing, right? Is like, how do we go D2C also while still empowering the retailers, right? It's not just like delivery direct, because not every state has delivery, right? You know, a lot of retailers get apprehensive about direct to consumer, but ultimately there will never be a day in our life that someone buys legal cannabis from somewhere that doesn't have a cannabis license. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they're going to be driving sales to that dispensary, whether it's for a pickup order or if they have their own non-storefront retail license in California, right? But like D2C is going to be a big one. And then obviously just delivery in general, man. Like it's tough to operate a profitable delivery business if you don't have your the experience and everything wired tight from like an operational lens. So like that's going to be a huge piece to it as well.
And so you envision, like, as we grow, because obviously D2C is something that's growing. You know, California's really been, in my personal experience, been on the forefront of that. You know, I'm in Washington.
Mhm.
We don't have delivery out here, so they haven't really had the ability to explore that. But for you guys, do you envision that like menu system for brands and like having it on their website, whether it's ordering direct to consumer or being able to go to a website and essentially place an order for, you know, one of the finest, instead of just seeing a dispensary map? Do you see that kind of as a natural progression?
Of course, man. It's a matter of when it makes sense to do it, though, right? And there's a lot of people trying to do it, but there's holes in it, and it's got to be it's got to be at the same level of consideration that we do everything else, right? If we're just going to do it halfway, then there's no point. And like when you're asking people to spend money with you and trust their brand reputation with you, you want to make sure that you have something that works. And so like it's absolutely something we're exploring. A matter of like there's some technical limitations in there in terms
Mhm.
of like tech stack and state integration and like how we position that, but like there's it's absolutely going to be something that we want to focus on. It's a matter of when, because like there's a few other things like getting Dutchie Pay ACH out the door is going to be a
Mhm.
really big thing. So we're really stoked on that. That's going to impact a massive amount of our customers as well as future ones. You know, continuing to like to refine and innovate on the technologies that we already have out there. That's also going to be a really big thing. And like, really, whether it's D2C or the menu for those brands, being able to improve the way that the brands communicate with the retailers and vice versa is something that's a huge focus of ours, because we know that like the more that we can improve that communication between the two of them, the better that is for everybody, right? It streamlines so many things. Like the brands and retailers will never exist independently, at least in this lifetime, in my mind, right? Could be
Right.
wrong, but those brands and retailers harmoniously have an opportunity to go further if we can help improve and move some of those conversations that traditionally were not in the digital space out that way as well. So
Absolutely. The consumers who ultimately wins is the process is more consistent, and a consumer can say, I want to get something, and then they can go ahead and get it on their time and their watch. The consumer wins, and then anyone in that supply chain down to that consumer is ultimately going to win. What are
totally.
some of the things that you I mean, you might not be able to say much, but what are some of the things you guys have on your plate for 2022?
Can't say a ton, but like all awesome things, right? I mentioned one of them, Dutchie Pay ACH. To be honest with you, I'm really excited that with growing and the fundraising that we've been doing, we can get behind. And this is actually, I'm going to backtrack. The thing that I'm most excited about is that we're going to be able to get behind some things that we're passionate about, like, social equity, social justice, decriminalization. Those are all really, really important things, as well as like improving like the normalization of cannabis as a byproduct of that. But like, now that we've raised the money and we've built out the company the way that we have, we've got a legal team, a GR team. We've got all these folks that are out there like putting the work in alongside folks that are putting work in Washington to make that happen. So like that in itself as like an evolution is something I'm so excited about, because then we can start doing things like providing more resources to folks that are trying to understand what it means to be a cannabis business and how can I be a cannabis operator as it becomes more prevalent. So like that in itself is like focusing on those individual things is what I'm most excited about. Like we've spent the last 3 years building an unbelievable like stage to set for what's to come in the next couple. And I finally feel like, the pieces are there, the people are there, we've built enough of a reputation with our customer base to where like, I feel like our customers trust us. And so now like that they're there to like benefit in this with us, right? The R&D stuff, like let's test and like being able to dump all that into innovation, right? That's just like the coolest thing in the world to me. And that's, I won't say anything else because I can't be too specific.
I got some thoughts in my mind of some of the ways you guys are going to go, but
I'll tell you offline, bro. No
yeah,
problem. You know what I
I
mean?
won't ask any questions that might fall in alignment with that, but
Totally.
I got some ideas. So, I don't want to ask too much because I don't want to lead into too much of that, but over these next, the cliche question of where you see this industry going over the next 5 years, I'd assume that you guys anticipate a lot more focus on e-commerce and then just online. I won't even call it education, but just transfer of information, correct?
Yeah, and we see it as a huge responsibility. Like so many people have to like selling data. That's never us, man. Like what we want to like purpose these things to like give you valuable insights to like, exhibits in town on a Tuesday, you're well more likely to sell a strawberry cough pre-roll in Seattle, right? Like those are the things that would be valuable to know as a retailer as you're setting up your specials for the day, right? So like ultimately, like that's like what we're super stoked about is like repurposing. Like there's a lot of companies that are doing some really creative and cool things around that type of stuff with like segmented marketing, et cetera. And there's a few that do them very well that we work closely with. There's also others that I think are they're missing the mark, right? If you blow by the exit by 4 exits in terms of understanding of what people get, then you're in a really tough spot, man. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's like the message is missed entirely. And so like making things digestible, right, is the most important, because we want to support, every cannabis retailer in every way that we can, right? And we hope that it's like with with one of our pieces of technology, but maybe it's with a thought leadership piece, right? Maybe it's with like a lot of other things. And so I think there's a lot of things there that we can all do to like push that forward. It's just a matter of like, where it falls into the ranking of like what people find are important on the retail front.
I love that, and I love the emphasis on digestible because I have a data guy, not a cannabis data guy, just a data guy. That's a
Totally.
friend and mentor of mine, and he's able to pull all sorts of crazy data. And I'll always be like, "Hey, could I get something like this?" And sometimes he'll just drop something on me, and I'll be like, call him up, like, "Bro, can you just give me the bullet points?" And then once he's like, "Okay, you see this, that," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, now this huge mess of an Excel sheet or graphs, now I get it, right?" Like he
Straight
could have
up.
just sent me the bullet points and I would have been good. But once I get the bullet points and the data set, it starts to make sense. But the data set on its own, if you don't know how to take action out of it, it's a lot of shit. And if you're cannabis operator, that's you like we mentioned throughout this, you already have a lot of shit to do, man. The goal is to make
Right.
it fucking easy.
Totally, dude. And like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like all that information is there. Um, like it's a matter of what do you do with it, right? How do you create something actionable? And like at the end of the day, it's like, so many people are out there sitting on, things that they could be doing to improve the business, but they're not.
Mhm.
And how do you suggest that in a way that doesn't like offend people, right? Because ultimately, like, I think about, hey, there we go. Oh, shout out to my fiance. I was like, could you please come turn the light on quickly?
Oh, that's funny.
So now we're live, baby. I'm here all night. So it's more or less like making things actionable and like, are we just like some people like have these things there and they just don't do anything with it,
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
That's something we see from a consulting standpoint of stepping into a lot of places that people have the tools, have the information, and whether they're too busy or they don't have the experience to connect those dots. And it's, sometimes as a consultant, it's difficult because they're like, "Oh, you didn't do much." And it's like, well, I mean, y'all weren't able to do it for 2 years with what you had, but just being able to easily connect these dots, look at the financial impact we were able to have.
well, and so much of it is the time, right? Like, what fires were you putting out in that time that you
Right.
wish you could have done that? Like, that's the thing I'm most excited about in terms of like how we've grown and scaled. Is like, there's so many things that I wish that we've been able to focus on as like a sales team, let's say, that we haven't been able to. And now that we have like unbelievable people that we've layered in that can focus on these particular things that make our business so much better, it's everything. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It literally means everything.
And so, what is the ideal like client partnership look like for Dutchie? What do you guys like quantify that, or is it just anybody that's selling cannabis out there, or do you guys have a criteria you like to put people in as like the ideal fit?
I mean, right now we're working predominantly with cannabis retailers. We've got relationships with the brands in support of that, and obviously we're launching some brand-related solutions like now that are really exciting. That I also won't lead into too much, but um, you know, in terms of like ideal customer profile, man, like cannabis retailers. I guess we want people to pay their bills. If I like it, all people paying their bills. Chasing checks and cannabis isn't fun for anybody,
Oh
but
God.
like we want to support all cannabis, obviously licensed retailers, right? We don't make our retailers on our platform compete with ones that aren't paying taxes, right?
Mhm.
And that's not even to knock on folks that may have done that in the past. That's been pretty public because, you start your company 15, 20 years ago. That's all there was back
Mhm.
then, dude. How else were you going to build a business around that? And so, like, for us, it's cannabis retailers and then eventually cannabis brands. But ultimately, we want to work with all of them, man. We're working with a lot right now. I mean, north of 5,000 in the U.S. and Canada, and so obviously continuing to expand into international markets is something we're really excited about. Predicated on how that works. But yeah, I mean, cannabis retailers, easiest way to say it.
What's the usual lead time? I know it probably changes depending on how wide of a network or integrations or how many stores someone has. But what's usually the lead time from getting that call in? Hey, we're trying to get onboarded with you guys to getting everything fully operational.
I mean, it's funny. A lot of that's really reliant on the retailer
Mm.
because we have a team of people that is on top of it. They will follow up to get those pieces of information. You say go, you sign the contract. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can, even if it's in spite of, the retailer themselves to make them successful, right? Because it's like everybody wants everything quickly. And then all of a sudden, when it's time to like have open, fluid communication, we won't hear from someone for like a month. And then they're like, it's like 6 p.m. on a Friday, like, hey, we want to go live now. And we're like, oh, no one's in the office besides our support team. And so like anywhere from like in a best case scenario, if it was full stack 2 weeks, up through we've seen like depending on more complex and like phased rollouts with larger retailers, up to like a month, 2 months that have like staggered and staged. But like, we have an unbelievable team that's like highly proficient in these things, and we have like very, very, very specific SOPs as like what's going to make a retailer successful in terms of like what that looks like in the implementation process. So, um, kind of varies, but we've hired in the last like month and a half, we've hired like over like 200 folks on the CS and support
Mm,
side.
And what states are you guys seeing the most growth in right now?
Growth in terms of rooftops, new licenses. You
Yeah,
talking like
probably bringing
GMB?
new people into the Dutchie ecosystem. How many people are signing up with you guys?
I mean, we're working with a lot of dispensaries, and that number is picking up pretty aggressively every single day. So that's really exciting. I would say like in terms of like newer markets, like emerging markets, that's always a big one because those are new licenses that didn't exist a year ago, right?
Hmm.
And then also like more legacy markets. We're picking up a ton of speed in California, and a lot of that had to do with us making some adjustments to our technology to be more form fit for the California market. Because I'll tell people all the time, like uh, there's like a micro economy within cannabis in California, right? And then there's everything else,
Hmm.
right? And so like as a company that in e-commerce we were starting to get really strong there. Acquiring a point of sale company, we almost wanted to slow down, and then two point of sale companies slow down to then speed back up and make sure we fit the need. And so like we've got a lot of traction in pretty much every market, man. Canada, everywhere. It's really like when our biggest struggle, and I say this in the most humble way possible, our biggest struggle is getting people to give us an opportunity to prove it to them, right? Because almost every company that we work with has been promised the same thing by another company, probably a couple times, and been let down, right?
Hmm.
So like ultimately, it's like structuring it in a way that just give us a shot to prove why you want to work with us, and our customer retention rate is like astronomically high for
Hmm.
that reason, you know.
Man, that's great to hear. I mean, and that's just a trip attribution to what you guys are doing to really put that customer first. And that's the vibe I've gotten from you and the company the entire time I've been aware of you guys. What are on a personal level? What are some of your favorite markets? I know you mentioned going back home, but favorite markets to go to. On behalf of whether it's traveling for business or events, food, cannabis. What are some of your favorite markets to personally visit?
Man, those are all different answers, but I love the California weed scene, man. I think they're just doing it unbelievable out there. Food scene, Vegas is always great. Also doing unbelievable things in the cannabis scene as well too. Music, dude. Get me like in the Northwest. Get me on the East Coast. Um, you know, I don't want to like alienate the Midwest, right? Because like Tekanina, baby, Kansas City's finest. Like we've been repping hard for a while out here, but like the Midwest has always kind of been like that, like catch up culture to everything else
Hmm.
happening on the coast, and that's actually a really good thing in a lot of ways. And so now, like to go into dispensaries like Illicit Gardens, like From the Earth, like the Kansas City cannabis companies in the world of Missouri, and see like true cannabis culture happening there, dude, is the most unbelievable thing in the world with like a little bit of like a Midwest feel to it. So like I love all of it, man. I'm just a citizen of the world. It sounds crazy to say, and that's like cheesy as fuck, but I'm like I truly appreciate spending time in all of those places
Hmm.
for all of those reasons. And fortunately, I've got a fiance that will turn the light on when the room's getting dark for me and also go explore all those places too. So it's like, when you got that kind of thing, and then Dutchie being as global as it's become, the weed game's taking us everywhere, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that like 15 years ago, when I'm sitting there driving around trying to avoid getting pulled over in my boy's car, listening to Bone Thugs, like it's a totally different story now, where it's like we're out in the open with this and we're just living
Hmm.
the dream, man.
And now you're smoking weed next to Bone Thugs at a party somewhere, man.
Smoking weed next to Mitch, who's smoking weed next to Bone Thugs, man. I ain't that tight, but no, I appreciate that, man. Totally.
Yeah, man. No, it's awesome. I really appreciate you having you on here today and chatting, especially in the evening time out there in the Midwest, man. For anyone out there looking for more information, Dutchie.com. Anything else you want to plug before we get up out of here?
No, man. I mean, honestly, we're just in sincere, humble appreciation of everything that's happened over the last couple of years, especially with you guys, man. You've always provided such an objective look on so many things, man. And fortunately, we were good enough to like fall on the right side of that fence, so I'm with it. But like, we're just here for it, man. We're here to support the industry, and we appreciate being a part of it. And then those looking to join the team as well on the cannabis technology side, Dutchie.com/careers. We're always hiring. We will continue to hire, and the right types of people too, in terms of like those that are like, we got a no asshole policy, man. And we hold to that pretty hard. So
if you're not a dick, go ahead and go apply, man.
Straight up. That's what I'm saying, man. Just get snipped out. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, I appreciate you having us on, dude. And you and your family have a happy holidays, man.
Awesome, man. Likewise. And for everyone out there watching episode 76, North American Weed Tour, looking at cannabis, legal cannabis across the country and beyond. This is episode 76, like I said, with Jon Bon, Director of Partnerships at Dutchie, man. Thank you for joining us.